I'm sorry. Good morning. Good morning. That's why y'all didn't answer the first time. Good morning. I like to time travel, so I'm already in the afternoon. That was a joke. Won't quit my day job. Trust me. All right, let me get started. My name is Jeff Menzise. I am an adjunct professor here, and as well as a full-time research professor up at Bowie State University, a graduate of Howard University and Fisk University. You know what I mean? Me and Dr. Williams were there together. We were in different departments, but we were trotting the road together. And man, Otis, why President couldn't be there while we graduated, you know? He's coming this year, which is good still. President Obama, for those who don't know, he'll be speaking at Howard's graduation this year, which is pretty fly, you know. He's going out with HBC or what. All right. So today's topic we're talking about here is what's love got to do with it. We're talking about intimacy, we're talking about relationship, but at the core of this discussion is going to be self-healing. And I'm dealing with self-healing from a psychological perspective, meaning I'm looking at what our understanding and practical application of psychology has to do with self-healing and what that has to do with how we interact with each other. Y'all follow? Yeah. Because intimacy is not always like, give me a kiss, baby, right? Sometimes intimacy is closeness, right? It's our ability to relate to one another. Like I got a story I'd like to share. When I was in Africa, I was over in Gambia one year, and I said, what's up to a brother? Come on, come down, be an example for me, man. He's like, oh man, I just got caught. Come on. So, I said, what's up to a brother? Come right here. And like stand over his leg, see. You know, shake hands, we say, so what's happening, bro? How you be? Right. See, he tried to let go. Y'all see that? Yeah, what'd I do? I held on. This is intimacy. And right now, my man probably like, yo, dude, let my hand go. That's how I was. And then the brother grabbed my hand tighter, and he just held on. So the whole time we were conversing, he held my hand. And we were walking. It was probably about 30 minutes. He was still holding my hand. I'm like, word. But I later understood that it was a connection here. Right? There was no way I couldn't pay this brother attention while I was talking. Why? Dude got my hand, and he's not letting go, right? And so we talked, and we walked, and we walked, and we talked, and then once the conversation was finished, then we let go. And we went on about our way. Thanks, brother. It's a very, very powerful experience to connect with each other. And as Akomfo Alma just said a little while ago, our first experience of connection, she said it in the context of our first shelter, our first home, is in the womb. It's in the uterus, right? Anybody had an experience different than that? Right, just want to make sure we all coming from the same place. I mean, I got jokes every now and then. but that connection is so important, it's so vital, right? And it's the closest that you can ever be to somebody, right? And that body that we were the closest to is our mother. And if you just need evidence, if you don't remember that experience, you got a belly button, that's the evidence. All right? That's your evidence. And so if you notice all the pictures of Adam and Eve, I think they have belly buttons in the picture. You ought to check that out just to see what that looked like. Really interesting, right? I ain't never even paid attention to that. But look at it, because symbols are very, very important. And they come to represent a lot. So anyway, that closeness of relationship, that intimacy, we need that. And when we're talking about our development, here go the developmental psychology stuff. When we're talking about our development, the development begins, let me ask a question. When does development begin? When does human development begin? Raise your hand and let me call one in class. Let me do a Dr. Wells in a little bit class. Yes, ma'am.
Is it like the conception, like in the womb?
Okay, so at conception? Does anybody have a different answer? When does human development begin? Yes, ma'am.
Before conception.
Before conception? What do you mean before conception?
In the mind, prior to
okay.
interaction.
It's like when I'm checking you out, I'm trying to get the heart up to ask you for your number. And it begins there. Before conception, all right?
Well before.
Well, even before then. Okay. Anybody got any other answers? Anything different than that? All right, so what I've come to understand is similar to what Sister Sabrina is saying here, is that conception or human development begins before the conception. And even, so think about it. You are a product of your parents, right? Which means that your development is directly tied to who? Your parents. And their development is directly tied to, and then theirs is, and so we let the circle be unbroken. Y'all follow what I'm saying? And so the development of our great-grandchildren is taking place right now while we're sitting in this room. It is a biological fact that every female baby that is born with every egg that she'll ever have in her life. That means y'all got your grandbabies with you right now. That means that some things you just don't do in front of them babies, right? You dig? So that's a biological fact. And so I was in a little sidebar discussion yesterday about the whole crack epidemic that hit in the 80s, right? And people said, somebody did a study, and this guy, he was quoting Freeway Ricky. He was like, well, yeah, the real Rick Ross, not the rapper, not the corrections officer posing as a dope dealer, but the real dope dealer who was a mule running crack in gangs from the West Coast across the United States. He said in a statement that that the whole myth about crack babies was not true, or the whole statement about crack babies was a myth, meaning that there was no genetic impact of people smoking crack on their offspring. And what I was saying, I beg to differ, because we have to look more than just at the biology and the physiology, right? We also have to look at the psychology, right? We also have to look at the emotional state. So imagine, if you will, and some of us may not have to imagine, what it would be like growing not only within a parent who is themselves crack addicted or involved with somebody who's crack addicted, but also being raised in that same environment. What does that do to your psychology? What does that do to your sense of intimacy? And so Erik Erikson's first stage of psychosocial development is what, class? Huh? Trust versus mistrust, and it's based on what? Parents, what about it though? Okay, but the trust with your parents is based on what? Making sure who said that? Making sure your basic needs are met, right? And so sometimes that whole, now Erikson starts that at birth, but sometimes that trust versus mistrust, the basic needs not being met, actually happens in the womb. You know? You ever heard of like pregnancy onset diabetes? Yes. Or when a pregnant mother, teeth literally begin to rot or bones become brittle, and she doesn't have enough vital minerals, vitamins, minerals, nutrients circulating within her body to provide for her and the developing baby, and so the baby is sort of like parasitic. And so the baby's going to get the selenium that it needs one way or the other. It's going to get the calcium that it needs one way or the other, even if that means what? Taking it from its mama. So some babies in the womb stealing from their mama. Then they come out what? Me against the world. You did? So, ain't that something? So when we start talking about intimacy, and we start talking about relationship, we start talking about our own personal health, we've got to expand the boundaries. We've got to push back against that paradigm that states that everything is concrete. Everything is as the theories tell us that it is. What's the key word in that statement? Theory. This stuff is theoretical a lot of times, meaning that it hasn't been demonstrated consistently enough to be flipped over into a law. As I was also taught by Dr. Laila Africa as a holistic health consultant, and he says a theory helps you to get through the day. He says you use theories to help focus your thinking and to help you get through your day, get through your project that you're currently working on, right? And so that's what they're about. So if I say, for example, so there's a difference here between thinking something, knowing something, feeling something, and believing something. Y'all following? Yeah. All right. And so, for example, let's say everybody I'm about to give you an example is telling the truth. We needed to find the exit to this room in order to save our lives. We've got 4 people sitting up here. We've got 4 panelists. The first panelist is belief. You say, panelist number 1, how do we get out of this room to save our lives? So, well, I believe you need to knock on this wall 3 times, click your heels twice, and then the door will open magically. Then you said, panelist number 2, Mr. Thinker. What do you think our answer is? He said, well, I think that if you just fold down the first 4 chairs in the second row and then run as fast as you can up that second flight of steps over there, the door will open for you. Then the next one said, he said, okay, we got belief, we got thinking, we got feeling. Mr. Filler, how do we get out of here? He said, well, that's simple. I feel that all we have to do is just close our eyes, take 3 deep breaths, and the answer will come to you. Now, I'm not clowning the responses, I'm clowning the process. Now we say, okay, Mr. Noah, what do we need to do? Mr. Noah said, oh, that's simple. We just pick up the clicker, point it to your right earlobe, click it 3 times, and then you'll know exactly which way to go. Who do you follow? The thinker, the feeler, the believer, or the knower? The knower. Why would you follow the knower? He's talking about putting a clicker to your earlobe. Because he knows. Because he knows. Y'all get that? It's a difference between feeling, thinking, believing, and knowing. Science is what? It's to know. The scientific method, I put an S on there on purpose, but accidentally. The scientific method is a method of knowing things. Science comes from the word skio, Latin, right? To know. And so what we're in the process, we're trying to figure out how to know things. And as much as possible, you want to know what it is that you're talking about. As much as possible, because what you know is what you know. What you think can change from this second to the next, right? How you feel can change by somebody coming and sitting next to you, depending on how they smell and how they look. It could be anything, right? And then beliefs, it could go with the most convincing argument in your face right now. Y'all follow? But what you know, you what? You know. Unless you only think you know what you know, then you're thinking again. And I'm not, you know what I mean? And so, but I'm not taking away from the process of thinking. Are y'all with me? Clear distinction here still. Anybody ever been told, you think too much? You ever heard, raise your hand, somebody ever told you think too much? Whenever somebody tells you you think too much, they've now become a suspect. Y'all follow? Because it's usually when you're trying to figure something out about them. They tell you you're thinking too much. Anybody who tries to stop you from thinking, anybody who tries to shut down your confidence and your ability to think is suspicious. At least to me. And I would encourage you to make them suspect too. Why would you say that, Dr. Menzise? Glad you asked. I would say that because thinking is what you have. It's your tool, it's your process, it's what your brain does for you. Right? On the physical level, on the cognitive level. But then spiritually, you know, sometimes the thoughts that you have, anybody ever had a thought the same time somebody else had a thought? Yeah. Like, true story, I used to DJ back in Nashville on a radio station. And it was an Usher remix that just came out, You Make Me Wanna, dating myself. So he had that remix come out, and I mixed it with a certain song on the radio. And I'd be dang if I had to get off the air and turn on one of the other stations, and my buddy on another station did the exact same mix. And I was mad. I was like, oh man, Wiz, why you gonna steal my mix? But the reality is we both had the same thought at the same time. It like popped into our heads at the same time. You know, and so then from that point I started thinking deeper about it. I was in grad school. I was in undergrad, I was like a junior at the time, then I continued in grad school. And I started thinking deeper about what is this whole thought process? You know, we call that metacognition, thinking about thinking. I started thinking about what is this process of thinking? What is it? How did I get the same idea as my man C. Wiz? How did I have the same thought and come out my mouth with the same word as my sister or my best friend? How did I think to call somebody at the exact same time they was calling me? The phone never rang, I picked it up and they was already on that joint. So you can't do that with cell phones. You know, cell phones, you can pick up your phone and you can see the contact, their name is already lit up. But like back in the day when we had like the landlines, like the real phone, some of y'all get it, right? Yeah. My folks in that back row, they're like, what? There was a time when we didn't have cell phones, right? Our cell phones would be as big as this tablet. Right? Like we walking around with like an encyclopedia, but it was a phone. They only mentioned the radiation coming off them things, that's another story. So we would pick up the phone and the person that we're trying to call and communicate with is already on the phone. You're like, you don't hear it down, so you're like, hello, hello? Like, hey, babe, I said, Mama, I was about to call you. There's my grandmother on the other line. You see? So we're thinking about things. So how is it that I have the exact same thought as somebody else? Did I summon them with my own thinking? That's possible. That's one option. You know, did we both hit the same wavelength at the exact same time, so it was simultaneous thought of each other? That's possible too. Did the other person think about me and made me think about them? That's the other direction. That's also another possibility. I tend to notice people when they notice me. And so like if I'm out somewhere and there's somebody that I know but I don't see them, but then they recognize me and what? I look and typically when you look at somebody looking at you, where you looking at them at? In their face, but straight in the eyes, right? It's crazy. Like all of the whole person that there is, you go boom, and lock right in on the eyes. And so there's an energy that's there is what I'm getting at. And thoughts are energy, right? How you think is energetic. The direction of your thought produces the outcome of your thought. As long as there aren't any more powerful forces, or as Obata Shaka would say, powerful external forces, shifting it and directing it in another direction. But if left up to you and only you and your thoughts, you're going to direct that energy and you're going to manifest exactly what it is that you're thinking. Y'all following? Yeah. Now all of this is very important. I'm just building the context here. Y'all still with me? Yeah. So we're building this context. Thoughts are energy. You can direct material, physical matter with your thoughts. They call it psychokinesis or telekinesis. You know, that stuff is still spooky. We call that parapsychology. And there have been tons and tons of experiments that have taken place. Stanford Research Institute, there's a lot of people that have done this research. But because it hasn't fit into the mold of the scientific method, they haven't been stated as being valid as of yet, although that realm is being opened back up now to seeking credibility. So there's an ability to make things happen with your mind. For example, you woke up this morning and you had a thought about what you was going to wear, right? Yeah. You got up, you followed that thought, right? And unless it was dirty, somebody might have put it on anyway, but unless it was dirty, you might have changed your mind, right? Right? So your thought did what? It changed, but if you did put on what you thought about, your thought manifested your physical reality. And see, that's just a tangible way of looking at this. Right now, thirsty. Thought, grab a bottle of water, open and swig it. That's the thought manifesting. That's a very tangible example of that. But here's another example. Anybody ever heard of a vision board? Yes. You make a vision board, those are your thoughts, right? Yeah, right. You're taking concrete examples of your thoughts, putting an image with it, right? Usually tearing up somebody's magazines, cutting pictures out and all this stuff. You put it on your vision board, and then you put the vision board somewhere where you're going to see it, right? Yeah. So that you're constantly reminded of what? What your goal is, what your visions are, what your intention is, right? And then eventually, if you stay consistent with it, boom, it pops up for you, right? Again, thought manifesting physical reality. See, we're demystifying it at this point. I don't want us thinking, oh my God, this is spooky stuff. It's every day, all day. Psychology, by definition, is the study of what? Behavior, and basic behavior and thought processes, right? By definition. Etymologically, meaning what does the word itself mean? Class? Oh, come on. The study of the spirit. So you got psyche and then you got ology, right? And the psyche piece is the soul or the spirit. It comes from Greek mythology, and then you have ology, which is the study of. We use that like biology, you know, all the other ology, sociology. So we're talking about the study of the soul. And in the Western paradigm, we say that the only way that you can study the unseen is through the seen. Meaning that we have to infer what somebody is thinking based on what? Their behavior. We have to try to assume how a person is feeling based on their behavior or what they tell you. You follow? We call those the self-report methods, right? And we understand that sometimes those might not be as reliable or as valid as we would like for them to be, right? Because for several reasons. Somebody might just want to bold-faced lie to you. Other times, some folks might not understand it themselves, right? And so they might be speaking what they believe is the case, but we wouldn't know that it could also be something else. Y'all see that? Yeah. That belief, that no. And so what does all this have to do with love? What does all this have to do with intimacy? What does this have to do with being able to be close with each other? What does it have to do with us as human beings and what our destiny has in store for us? Anybody want to take a stab at that? I hear y'all thinking though, so that's good. So what we do is I'll push forward. So the presentation that I'm going to give you, I'm really just using this as like backup just for some imagery. From time to time I refer to an image to kind of guide our discussion. Hopefully some of the images might inspire certain thoughts in your own mind. But again, the context within which I'm discussing it is dealing with practically applying psychology. In the truest definition of psychology, which is the study of the soul, which also consists of the thought processes, you know, the mind, and also the physical behaviors. They're all directly related. I just don't want to exclude that soul part of it. Because the worldview to which I ascribe, and which I have found to be more natural, you know, to people who are non-Western people. And that doesn't mean that all black people are non-Western and all white people are Western. It means that non-Western is an orientation. It's a mind state. Like, for example, you could look at Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung and the work that they were doing, and they would be considered Western psychologists, but they were dibbling and dabbling in some non-Western stuff and actually constructed their psychological paradigm, a psychiatric paradigm based on their experiences with non-Western cultures. Y'all following? Yeah. If you need some evidence or some proof, just Google Sigmund Freud. Not right now. I know y'all got pocket computers. Don't do it now, but later. Google Sigmund Freud office and click images. And you're going to see him sitting at his desk, and you're going to see a bunch of like Egyptian statues and, you know, statues from Asia. You're going to see pictures on the wall. And if you look at Carl Jung, he made a statement once after he studied with some East Africans. He made a statement about how I'm paraphrasing, how he couldn't consider himself a healer or a witch doctor until he went and studied amongst them. And it wasn't witch doctor in a derogatory sense, like, You know, like, I'll put a spell on you. It wasn't that. It was more like a witch doctor as in somebody who mastered psychology, mastered the soul. Y'all get it? The healing arts that Sister Alma, Kung Fu Alma was talking about are coming from that place where the non-tangible meets the tangible, where the non-tangible or the soul, spirit, and mind interacts and influences, if not downright manipulates the physical reality, right? That's why you can ask the #1 heart surgeon in the nation, where does the first heartbeat originate? And they really couldn't answer you. And if they were being honest, they would have to say, I don't know. You can ask Dr. Ben Carson, great neurosurgeon, excellent. I wish he would have never touched politics, because then he just, that legacy just kind of got jaded real quick. But I mean, brother, I know people who had like these manuals of great black scientists, and when they put out the next edition, they took him out. Yeah, and right. I was like, come on, bro, you got to reprint that, put him back in there. But he was so upset about the politics that he erased him. And I said, you can't take that legacy. But you can ask Dr. Ben Carson, where does the first neural impulse come from? And he can take you all the way back down, to the developing baby, the zygote. You can go on all that stuff and talk about when the neural crest is being formed and all the differentiating cells and the stem cells turning this. He could do all of that. And he said, but I'm asking you about where did the original neural impulse, where did that original electrical impulse come from? And they could theorize that it traveled through the mother and into the, the developing baby. But then you have to say, well, where did hers come from? And what I'm getting at is that we talk about energy not being created nor destroyed. But if everything was created, then it too has been created at one point. But then there must be a way to tap into it and bring more in. And so now we're talking about the healing arts of pranic healing and Tai Chi and stuff like that, which is beyond the scope of this presentation. But there are examples of that. My whole point is saying that there is a realm that the majority of people on the planet believe and know that you can tap into in order to manipulate and manifest in this realm of living. Y'all with me still?
Yeah.
All right, everybody take a deep breath. We're going to get a little more concrete real quick. Can you click the first slide for me? Is that Charles back there? Name's Charles. Oh, you got it. Oh, my bad. So on the first slide, there's going to be a picture. Who knows who that is? I know, it's a trick question. I see who's paying attention. See who got the eyes here. You got the eyes here. It's Benjamin Hooks, right? Well, yeah, it's a trick question. Yeah, it's a trick question. This is tying directly into what Kung Fu Alma said about how brothers feel like we need to interact. And not only brothers, but the total Western perspective of things is brawn over brains. And I don't want you to misunderstand this statement to think that Brother Hooks is saying that everything should just be about thought and there's never a time for physical resistance or a physical fight or to meet fight with fight. What I'm understanding from this statement is that you have to think about what it is that you're going to do. You have to be calculated. You have to be strategic, meaning understand the context within which you are acting before you act. Because sometimes action is inaction, right? Sometimes somebody tell you better move, sitting right where you are is action, right? Not budging is action. Disobedience to authority sometimes is action. Any of y'all familiar with Stanley Milgram and his experiments? I bet if I say it like this, experiment when the teacher, what they thought they were shocking somebody? Oh. The shock experiments, okay, cool, it's Milgram. So, disobedience to authority, that's studied. And so what does it take to be disobedient? Sometimes it takes a